Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of JD's NASCAR and Sports Podcast. This week, we recap the Watkins Glen race and look forward to Daytona. Before we get into the race recap, I just wanted to thank everybody once again, just like I do at the beginning of every show. Thank you for your support, for listening to the podcast, for subscribing, for rating and reviewing. And if you haven't done that yet, continue to do it. And I really appreciate it. And go like the Facebook page, JD's NASCAR and Sports Podcast, where I break all the news that goes around the NASCAR community and share things to do with NASCAR, etc. And just once again, thank you all. We are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Amazon Music now. So 3 big platforms and 3 big ways to get the podcast out there and continue to grow it. So thank you, and let's get into the race recap. Last week I said that I would bet a lot of money that the Watkins Glen race would be better than the Indy Road Course race. Well, let's just say I'm glad I didn't make that bet anywhere, because it was not. And I'm going to be honest with you all, just like always. Indy Road Course, in my opinion, was better than Watkins Glen, and I did not think that was going to be possible. Both races had long green flag runs with only 1 caution each, both towards the beginning of the race. And, whoever's decision it was to put 2 road courses back-to-back, I think will definitely rethink that decision. I touched on that a little bit last week. I do not see 2 road courses in a row being on this schedule next year. And if there is, I really will question that. I think there's a reason that NASCAR only went to 2 road courses for the first 100 years of their sport. NASCAR isn't made for road racing, just my opinion. I do enjoy it sometimes, but with this new car, sometimes it's really hard to watch. The tires are so big, the brakes are so big. These guys hardly make mistakes with this new car at road courses, and I think that's a reason as to why there's no spins or big wrecks at road courses so far since they've had this next-gen car. And I think that will continue as long as we go to a lot of road courses like we have been lately. So, just to recap, I'm of the opinion that we do not need back-to-back road courses on the schedule. You all can let me know what you think about that on messages or comments or anything, but that's just my opinion. Both of these races were dominated basically by one person, and they were different people, but at Indy it was Michael McDowell, and at Watkins Glen it was William Byron. And those guys seemed untouchable. They had clean air out in front of them, and they just didn't make mistakes. And both of those guys had good wins. And, Michael McDowell continued his trend of staying hot as he won the first stage of this race. I say continued it. He continued it for the first part of the race. It looked like he was going to go back-to-back, honestly, at the beginning. He took the first stage. There was no cautions before that. However, he did get a penalty on the green flag pit stops, drove through too many pit stalls, and that really set him back for what was a nightmare rest of the day for him. William Byron wins the second stage. Once again, no cautions or anything before that. This race was the shortest race in NASCAR since 1972. So if this podcast isn't as long, we base it off of race recaps and stuff. That is why, but just want to get that out there. This race was under 2 hours in total length. So very short race. After stage 2, of course, we don't go caution anymore at the end of the stages at road courses. Chase Elliott trying to play strategy, him and his team, and this was the biggest story of the race. Chase Elliott runs out of gas. They had some bad info. They thought that he could go 3 laps on fuel once he flipped the switch, which just didn't seem right to me. Usually you can make it a lap to 2 laps on a 1.5-mile track once you flip that switch, but 3 laps on a road course, especially one the size of Watkins Glen, is about unheard of. So I'm not really sure what info they got there, but just detrimental to Chase Elliott's day and his hopes of making the playoffs. Now he's got to go all in and pretty much win the lottery and win at Daytona, which is going to be very, very hard to do. But, he's good at super speedways, so maybe he can do it. But if you all have listened to me over this whole season, I haven't thought that Chase would be in the playoffs, so I'm still of that belief. After the caution for Chase Elliott's fuel woes, which was the only caution of the day, as I was saying, one caution, Kyle Larson too fast exiting the pits, and this really hurt him. He had got up to third. He was right on Denny's bumper there, coming in for green flag pit stops, and worked his way up to the top three and was going to have a solid day. But speeding on pit road just totally knocked him out of contention, especially since there was no more cautions. So once again, Larson struggles. He's been struggling a lot lately ever since Pocono happened. Just not having the speed or the finishes that that team really wants. After Larson's penalty, Eric Almirola spins in the front stretch, coming to the finish line, blocks the whole track basically, but it was able to get it spun back around. And like I said, that was no caution. So NASCAR I would give them props. They did their best to not have to throw a caution to jumble everything back up and stack everybody back up. So good call. Almirola was able to get it fired up and going pretty quickly, and nobody else ran into him. Everybody did a great job of getting around him. That wreck was more towards the back anyway, so good call on NASCAR's part not to throw the caution there. And I touched on McDowell's nightmare second half of his day. After the 2 pit penalties, he had worked his way back up. He was doing good. He had a really good car, it seemed like. And he loses power. Just the engine shut off on him. And that ended his day as his team pushed his car back to the garage. And we never saw him again. He came home in last. So take the high of highs winning the Indy last week. And 1 week later, you're sitting in the garage and finish last at Watkins Glen. So that's basically this sport in a nutshell, it seems like, for these guys. Do super great 1 week, and then some of them are last place the next. So I hate that for Michael McDowell. He had a fast car. Like I said, had the potential to go back to back. And then we get to something that I've really struggled with all week long, and that is Kyle Larson and Austin Dillon. If you're Kyle Larson in this situation, I don't understand what you're thinking, wrecking somebody for 19th. It seems like Austin Dillon got into Larson a little bit and moved him up out of the way for a spot. And Larson just took offense to that and just flat out wrecked both of them. And to me, that makes no sense. I really was starting to like Larson before all the issues with Denny that he's had this year. And this with Austin Dillon, I have no feelings either way about Austin Dillon. But, it makes no sense. Why? And obviously he says he didn't mean to wreck them. But, he sent it in super deep into that corner, and I don't really know what he expected to happen. I guess he just expected to wash them up maybe and end up passing Austin Dillon for the spot. But either way, it's for 19th place. Your day's already ruined, and that probably had some effect too, as Larson had a good day going, and, that might have just been the cherry on top when he got the bumper of Austin Dillon and that 3 machine that moved him up. Maybe that was just the end of his mind working at that day, and he just wasn't going to have it. So I just don't understand it. I don't agree with it, but it is what it is. I guess he'll learn from it and move on, but I really wasn't happy to see that at the end. Why destroy race cars like that? You've had a clean day so far. Really makes no sense. I expect Austin Dillon to race him harder in the future. Granted, Austin Dillon and that team really hasn't been up front much this season, but there'll be scenarios when Larson will need around him, and I could see Austin Dillon taking offense to that because that was completely uncalled for, in my opinion. That whole incident was coming to the checkered flag, and as they take the checkered flag, William Byron wins at Watkins Glen, and just a pretty good year for the 24 team. I think this is most wins in a season so far, and I don't think he's done. I think he'll win one or two more in the playoffs. These guys have just been rolling. They're consistently up front and have really good cars, bring fast cars to the racetrack. So congrats to Willie B on his win. Denny Hamlin second, which was impressive. He hadn't been able to really run super well. I mean, he would qualify well at road courses, but hadn't been able to put it together. He put it together Sunday and came home with a second-place finish. So that was good to see. Another pole for him and a good, solid run. And now it leaves us with Daytona. The regular season points battle, Martin Truex Jr. is 39 points up on Denny, and it's down to those two. One of those will be your regular season champion and be granted 15 extra playoff points, which will be huge. And the second place will get 10. So, either way, it's going to be an interesting battle. I think that it's not out of touch. It's not out of reach. Denny made up 21 points this week. He was 60 behind going into Watkins Glen. He's now 39 behind going into Daytona. So Martin gets in a crash or doesn't run as well, and Denny has a solid day. I think Denny is right there for the chance. It'll be down to those two. So now on to Daytona, which in my opinion I think will get rid of the stink of last week's race. I think this has the potential to be a crash fest, but in a good way, if that makes sense. I love super speedway racing. I really loved it with the Gen 6 car. Oh my gosh, you could make moves like crazy. Those guys would absolutely make crazy moves in the Gen 6 car, but next gen is all right. You're going to be 2x2, and whichever line has the most momentum is going to go, and the other one's going to fall back, and it'll just switch up, back and forth the whole time. But I think, so many guys are desperate for that win to lock themselves in the playoffs. I think it'll be a pretty awesome race. I think that Daytona being moved to the last regular season race of the year is a great decision. Did I love it being on 4th of July? Yes, I did. But, I'm not one of those people that thinks it has to be on the 4th of July, the second Daytona date of the year. And Daytona, the city doesn't think so either. They use the 4th of July weekend now as a tourist weekend, still bring in a ton of money for the city. So they want to keep it right where it is, and I do too. Even Atlanta would be a good end of the year regular season wild card as well. But I think Daytona's number one, and I hope they keep it the last race of the regular season for a long time. It's just, you never know who's going to win. Everybody in the field has a chance to win at Daytona. Just think last year, the craziness, the whole field wrecking. It just starts randomly raining and the whole field wrecking at Daytona. And by the end of that race, you had about 12 cars on the track, and Austin Dillon ends up winning and locking himself into the playoffs. I mean, that was craziness. I don't think it'll be that crazy, but, I think it'll be pretty wild, and I can't wait to see who comes out on top. And it would not surprise me if it was a person who hadn't won this year, which will really suck for Bubba Wallace, who has pointed his way. He's in good shape points-wise, but one person who hasn't won all year sneaks up there and gets a win, he's going to be knocked out of the playoffs. So that would be rough. But, Bubba's a great super speedway racer himself. So as long as he isn't in an incident early, if there's no new winners, I think Bubba will lock himself in. So we'll see. This is all prediction-based, totally my opinion. And I think that we're going to get right into it. The team to beat, Fords seem fast on super speedways this year. They always have been. So I automatically got to go with Penske just because Joey Logano, Austin Cindric, and Ryan Blaney are all really good super speedway racers. Austin Cindric won the Daytona 500 last year. Seems like Blaney won this race 2 years ago in the Gen 6 car. Blaney won. So, those guys always find their way up front and work together. They normally qualify really well on super speedways. So I'm going to go Team Penske for the team to beat. And once again, it's Daytona. These predictions are the least likely to come true of any other track on this circuit. I'm just giving you my opinions, and if they come true, then I might as well go buy a lottery ticket. But I think Team Penske is your team to beat, and I think that this honestly has the potential to be one of the best races of the year. And I don't say that every single week. If you all know me, I do not say that, but I think this does. I just cannot emphasize enough that Saturday night is going to be an awesome race, and I will be highly disappointed if it's not. So, but I think it will be going into the playoffs. That's another thing. Next week, we're going to recap Daytona and really dive into the playoff predictions as the playoffs will be starting up. This is an awesome time to be a NASCAR fan and for you all to be a follower of the podcast, because I'm going to get into my predictions. You all can send me yours and all that once the playoff field gets locked in. So next week's episode is going to be really fun. But, some things to look out for. Can Austin Dillon repeat? I know it was kind of a wild situation last year, but he still had to go up and win that race. I don't think he was really in contention for a playoff spot. He's definitely not in a contention for it this week, but he could pop up out of nowhere and get this thing done, and, it wouldn't be crazy. Can Ty Gibbs, who normally, I don't really see as a super speedway racer, he's in that 17th spot. Could he potentially win and get himself in? Or Chase Elliott or Alex Bowman? Both of those guys. Like I touched on earlier, Chase Elliott is a guy that's really good at super speedways. So these are all questions that are going to be answered by the end of the night on Saturday. And I can't wait to break it all down next week. And now we're going to get into my prediction of who is going to win this race, and then our question of the week, and then we'll get out of here. Once again, thank you all for listening. I know this pick is going to be wild to some people, but this team has ran a lot better this year than they ever have before, and I think this guy's a great super speedway racer. Even back when this team was struggling bad, it seemed like he was always in the top 10 coming down to the last couple laps. Last year, I think he would have been a factor at the end, but had an incident that he was involved in. I think Corey LaJoie sends that 7 car to victory lane and locks himself in the playoffs, and flips the playoffs upside down. knocks Bubba Wallace, Ty Gibbs, all of them out, and I think Corey LaJoie gets your win for his first career win, and it couldn't come at a better time as it would lock Spire into the playoffs. I just mentioned Spire Motorsports last week as a team that I think will be the next in victory lane. I think I said I didn't think it would be this year. I'm changing my mind. I think Corey LaJoie wins at Daytona, and if he does, I definitely need to go buy a lottery ticket. I'm sure his odds are astronomical, but I think this race is going to be so crazy. I think it's going to be a race of attrition. And I think if you're there at the end, I think you got a chance. So, in my opinion, I think Corey LaJoie brings home the checkered flag. And now we are on to the question of the week. This question of the week is honestly pretty unique and a great question. Continue to submit your questions. Message me on our Facebook page, or text me if you know me and you're listening to this, or comment on the rate and review section on Apple Podcasts or wherever. Just get in touch with me and send me questions. I love reading them, and I pick one every week. And this one comes from a new fan of NASCAR, and it says, I've just got into NASCAR. Who should I cheer for? And that's a short, basic question. And, that's totally your opinion. If you like somebody who wins a lot, I would pick, a driver from one of these bigger teams. If you like an underdog, my pick that I just picked to win this week is Corey LaJoie. He's a great guy. Been nice every time I've met him. That would be a good underdog for you to cheer for. The bigger teams, you've got Hendrick, Joe Gibbs, and Penske. Trackhouse is a good up-and-coming team too. But those are your main teams. And, the sport's most popular driver is Chase Elliott. And, if you're looking for most popular guy, that's probably who I would go for. But I've been cheering for Denny Hamlin since he came into racing in 2006. And he's always been my favorite. I'm going to hate the day when he calls it quits. But that's my driver. He's won 50 career races so far, and I think he'll end up winning more. But, just watch a couple races, see who you like. A lot of people I know base it on how the car looks and stuff like that. My reason for cheering for Denny was I just liked he was gritty, sponsored by Jordan, has been since he came into NASCAR. That was my guy. And me and him kind of have the same attitude as, if you don't like us, we don't really care. And that's really a guy that I've loved to watch racing because he races that way too. And I really admire that about Denny, and that's my guy. So we'll see. If you let me know who you end up choosing, by the way, whoever sent this in. Let me know who you end up choosing, and I'll give you my opinion on it. But and speaking of Denny, there's rumors going around that 2311 might be making a shift to either Ford or Chevrolet, and that's impacting Denny's deal with Joe Gibbs Racing. And let's hope this don't happen. I'm Team Toyota all the way. I couldn't imagine Denny. I know he drove a Chevrolet his first couple years, but that's just because JGR was with Chevrolet. But I hope Denny stays with Joe Gibbs and Toyota, and I hope 2311 can get a Toyota deal done. But I've heard there's a real possibility that they could both be changing manufacturers. So we will see. I hope that doesn't happen, just as a fan. But and then another piece of news really quick before I sign off. Austin Hill re-signed with RCR to run Xfinity. In our rumor mill a couple weeks ago, I really thought that Austin Hill would go to the Colleague Racing 31 car in Cup next year. That is not going to be the case, as he re-signed to drive for RCR in the 21 car. So silly season in NASCAR is going to be fun as well at the end of this year to see what drivers end up where and all that. So let's go on to Daytona. And I think this race will, like I said earlier, will make up for the blah racing the last couple of weeks, as I expect great things out of Daytona and this race. So next week we'll have a full playoff field set, and we'll go round by round and have my predictions. And I appreciate you all for listening, and this has been JD's NASCAR and Sports Podcast. Continue to rate, review, like, subscribe, and until next time, thank you.